I'm Stuart Gilly. I'm with the Alliance.
I'm Andrew with the East Baton Rouge Parish Library Small Business Service, and thank you all for coming.
Welcome to the Building Your Business Plan workshop. Raise your hand if you're trying to start a brand new business right now. Okay, so raise them up a little bit higher. I'm not that good. Okay, all right, and raise your hand if you're just trying to grow an existing business. Okay, that's great. So the reality of it is regardless of where you are, whether you're starting or growing, a business plan is really key. And so we're going to kind of kick off a little bit around that. So we have people in both sides of the aisle here, but when we think about knowing the market and our customer, how do you guys suggest that these business owners clearly define the need in the market that they're trying to solve? How would you guys go about that? Any one of you can jump in first.
Okay, I'll just jump in.
Go ahead, Heidi.
It helps that someone has experience in what they're wanting to do, because there's nothing more painful of starting a business and you really have no, I'm going to pick on a restaurant, because a lot of people want to have a restaurant. They make a great gumbo or what have you, and they just want to bring that to the public. So it's very difficult because it's not about how good the food tastes. It's about the operations and the systematic approach. So I think market research to me is most important. I'm a big proponent of primary, secondary research and really immersing yourself in the marketplace, understanding competitors. There's incredible secondary research out there, but it's sad to say that a lot of people do not spend time primarily looking at something. I've had people that'll go rent an office building or a restaurant location for $10,000 a month. And I'm like, did you sit in the parking lot and just observe how many cars come through that? So I'm a big proponent of market research and going forward, but I'll let somebody else jump in.
Go ahead, Adrienne.
You can tell I've got some thoughts. So we're working on developing a new product right now. And I will just tell you exactly how we're approaching it. And it's the same way that I've approached starting my own businesses in the past. So I've started 2 businesses on my own, and I always start with a prototype. I always start with something that I want to start testing with who I think my target audience is. I put it in front of them. I say, can I do this for you for free? Do you want to try this out and let me know what you think? And then ask a lot of questions. I get really curious. I find people who I think are having the challenge that I'm trying to solve. I think that even if in a restaurant, right, you're solving the challenge of, I really am craving gumbo, where's the one place I'm going to go? And so when I'm developing any kind of new product or thinking about starting a business, like, what is the challenge that I'm really trying to solve? Who is the customer that I'm really trying to serve? And then just go talk to those people. And that's, I think, going to give you a lot of insight. I had a really hard conversation on Monday of last week with a focus group. And they said, I don't really understand what this is for or who this is for. And so I was like, dang, I've got some more work to do in ensuring that I'm actually solving a real problem and not one I made up in my head.
Yeah, so I want to try to talk a little bit about this too, because I think some of the best companies I see are the ones that are always willing to still think about the product in its infancy, right? Like, so you'll see really good companies come out and they'll test something, but they treat it like it's a brand new company, right? So let's maybe talk a little bit about how do we get to know our customers better? Because maybe somebody's like 2 years into it and they're like, well, I don't know. I think I know my customers. Is that fair? Or should they be thinking more about, constantly redesigning or thinking about how to engage those customers?
Yeah, I think it depends on, so it could be one of 2 things. You have a great idea. The execution of that idea is where the rubber meets the road. And so you have to get feedback from your identified customer, right? What problem are you trying to solve? Be really clear on that and be humble. You can't put a value on good feedback from those folks that you've identified in the market as your customer and the problem for them that you're trying to solve.
And is that family and friends that you should get that feedback from, Toby?
So no, I think it winds up being what we call an early adopter. These are folks that understand the product may be in a state of imperfection, right? and they understand that. And so that's different than the potential client that expects perfection from the get-go. You want to save, you want those folks, but you want to wait and maybe catch them after you've refined the product.
Yeah. So if we think about, Kyle, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, I think they did a good job answering the question. I think just to unpack a little bit, I've seen a lot of folks just get a bit intimidated about whether it's demographic data, if it's other types of data that's readily available to your business, but there are also a wealth of resources available with different platforms that can do a lot of this research for you. So being comfortable with those sources of information, understanding essentially what your clients and customers' needs are. I mean, if you're not solving a customer's problem, that's going to be an inherent issue with launching your business. So yeah, I think having the data in your hip pocket, understanding who you might need to speak with, and then they did an excellent point with just going to sit down in front of them, not as a sales pitch, but more for feedback. You'd be surprised how much more engagement you'll get when you're asking for feedback versus trying to pitch a purchase.
Yeah, and so you mentioned humility earlier about like feedback. I'm gonna go ahead and give myself feedback. I forgot to call up our fifth panelist. So from the back of the room, would Casey O'Banion please come join us? Yes, Casey. I'm like, wait, there's a fifth. Where is number 5?
We're gonna get back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's on me. This is what happens, guys. We make mistakes, and then we just learn from them. Casey, you work with a ton of high schoolers in Young Entrepreneurs Academy, which is, by the way, if you don't know about this, check it out. It's an amazing organization, and Casey's the CEO of it. So you're constantly working with brand new ideas that are looking for their market, their customers. How do you guys guide our high schoolers, our youngest entrepreneurs in town, to think about this?
We start with kind of their outlook on their business as far as who their kind of test market's going to be. I interviewed a student yesterday for the program he has a visually impaired grandfather. And so his grandfather used to hold his neck, he said, and would walk him around. They'd go get coffee, and his grandfather would say, "What are we looking at now? Where are we? What's on here?" And so he wants to create a pole that is kind of a smart pole that goes to an earpiece where it can kind of identify maybe either people's faces that you can upload, and you can see somebody that's coming. It can upload different words. It can upload different streets where you're walking. It can connect to Google Maps and a few different things. These are great ideas, but what does this lend to? And kind of something that we try to do is we try to set them up with area entrepreneurs like yourselves that have expertise in different areas and have them come in and kind of get them to think a little bit outside the box. So I think if I can think of it, I'm not much of an entrepreneur myself. And so if I can think of the market, it's probably pretty simple and pretty out front, and anyone could think of it. All right. And so, but how do you think of the market other than just visually impaired people around the world? I always try to get them to think about Shark Tank. When they say, this is a $10 billion industry every year, sleeping or something like that. And immediately one of the sharks kind of rolls their eyes and says, "Of course it is," or something, but who's really the market for this? And they'll say, anyone that goes to sleep at night is the market for this. Well, anyone that is visually impaired might be the market for this poll. Or this next, something that they're coming up with. But who's the market outside of that? And so that's where entrepreneurs come in that have done these things before and can teach these students. We have mentors that we pair up with each student that sometimes they're in their field. We try to pair them up in their field. Last year we had a brownie company and we could set them up with a baker that can tell them all about, hey, this is how you'd want to set your industrial kitchen up, your commercial grade kitchen. You want this oven, not this oven. But is our baker, are they going to be the best at this go-to-market strategy? I don't know, maybe not. We actually set the brownie student up they were set up with a baker and then a drone creator who had a drone company that they used for insurance because they had a really good insight into what this student would really want to do later on. And so it's a roundabout way of answering that question, but we just try to get them to think a little bit outside the box based on kind of what they've created and who could benefit from this.
Well, thank you for sharing, Casey. And I think one of the things that's kind of a theme here too is like, you don't have to figure that out on your own, right? And one of the things that I think YEA does a good job is they get other people who have more experience around them to help them think about who is that target market. So Heidi, you mentioned earlier before you open a restaurant, sit in the parking lot and watch and see. And I love that. But if somebody's, already existing business or starting a business, how should they think about the competitive landscape? Let's talk a little bit about that. Knowing their market, what should they do? How do they go about doing a competitive analysis?
Well, that's one of my favorite parts of a business plan is the competitor analysis because it gives you that opportunity to look at their strength and their weaknesses. And I mean, it could be as simple as a machine shop and you're looking at your competitor and they don't have a website, right? So I think just understanding it, experiencing their product or their service, and really delving into what they sell. Because it may not be apples to apples, and you've got to find where you might be able to have a strength over that particular competitor, and you might offer something or value added that that particular competitor does not offer. So I think really immersing yourself in the landscape of your competitors, understanding what they offer, and then experiencing it. Is there something I can improve? Is there a value added that I can do? I'm just going to pick on a landscaper, but it may be that, hey, I do offer weeding or what have you, and not just cutting grass. Something that makes you stand apart. One of the things is not being flexible. I know when a small business owner starts, 99.9999% is you're going to delve into something you never expected. You started off doing this one service, but the demand is maybe not there, and you've got to have the ability to pivot very quickly, because if you're going to be rigid, you're not going to do well. Years ago, I had somebody that worked in construction, and somebody asked them to install 2 gas lanterns, and they're complaining in my office like, okay, they don't want to do it. They work in the medical industry and don't want to use their hands. They're offering you $1,500 to do it. It's revenue. All funds, some money's better than no money. And so I think that's an idea, just to be open, flexible, and you're going to pivot where you got to in order to do well in the landscape against competitors.
Okay. Yeah.
I think also you don't want to try to be everything to everybody. I think to the extent that you can know who you are and how you're going to change the world, and then figure out who your target client is and what 3 things separate you from the competition, and then be excellent at that.
Yeah, that's fair. But I want to stay on competitors right now. So go, Adrian, tell me a little bit more.
My kind of hot take, or maybe unpopular opinion, is I think that you can eliminate 90% of your competition just by focusing on a niche. Like, I think if you really find what makes you unique, you create a market for yourself. And I know that sounds like idealistic, but I've seen it work. And you just double down on that niche. I mean, you really find what makes me different. So I'll talk about who other people might put us in the same bucket with SSA, another consulting firm. The way that I distinguish us from the work that we do is we really focus in on organizations that are high change, high risk, and in need of a specific skill set around resiliency. And that's like what we are best at, and that's what I'm going to lead with. And I think that that is what is going to set us apart in the room every time. Now, that means that we might say no to opportunities that are not the right fit, or might lose opportunities where they have a different competitive advantage. But I'm not worried about the work that they're doing down the street, because I know we've got a really specific skill set for a certain type of client, and that's who I'm going to pursue.
Yeah. But that also comes because you understand what your competition, what the clients, the other ones that are in the market are doing for your clients.
Everything that she said, let me reiterate. I think you go see what they're doing. What are they offering? Where's their gap in the market? Like, the reason that I was able
to pick up their crumbs too.
Yes. No, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, but here's the thing. You can't, to the gentleman at the end, I forgot his
Toby.
name. Toby, what he said, you can't be everything to everyone, so you can try, you will fail. So to me, it's a lot better to see where's there a gap in the market. What are you naturally good at and excited about? I think enthusiasm accounts for a lot, and go after it hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kyle?
I think you want to be, as passionately curious as you can possibly be to just uncover all the nuances of the business, not necessarily just the products and services, but, we make a lot of decisions on our purchases on emotions. So understanding what the client and customer journey looks like, there are platforms out there that do a lot of this research for you.
We're going to talk about them in a little bit because some of them live at the library. But anyway, great plug, Kyle.
But yeah, being able to, for example, being able to scrub a competitor's website and understanding who's visiting their website and what products and services they're looking at, like those
Talk
are
to their
tools that make it
clients.
easy.
How was your experience working with them? I love to do that.
Yeah, and I think that most purchasers of services and products are looking for options. So if again, if you're getting in front of them and talking to them and demonstrating a level of interest and effort, you'll get some opportunities.
All right. So how do we validate the demand for the product in the market? How do we think about that? If we're running one of these businesses, what's the go-to here?
I think the go-to is having somebody, sign a contract or make a purchase. I think that's the ultimate.
Yeah, sales are a pretty good indication.
But then, okay, so got you. So I talked to a business owner here earlier today who said that once they sell it, they don't have the clients leave, but it's hard for them to sell it. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do we validate that product market fit? That's a really big deal for small business owners, right?
Could you say that again?
Like, how do they validate their product market fit? Like, this product, how do I get it? I go sell, but I have 10 clients, but I need 100. What do I need to do to mature my product in the market? How do we guide them? How do we advise them?
That's kind of that phase I was speaking to. If you've got 10 and you want 100, you're still in the early stages of developing the product. And, if you put that product in the hands of the right people that are going to give you feedback, listen and make it better, adapt your product to the feedback you're getting, and trust that, the other 90 are out there and will want it. It's just what we've been saying about getting better, with the goal of being excellent.
I think it's you put your customer first, like especially in the beginning, you've got to go really hard on the customer. I mean, how was your experience? What did you think of it? I used to pick up the phone after we would close a deal and or wrap a project and just say, give me your raw feedback. Give me your honest thoughts. What worked, what didn't work? What could we do better next time? And use that to go forward to the next exchange. If you have a product, take the time to, reach out to that customer or, keep them in your lead funnel, keep front of mind. I think that get those early adopters that are just going to become fanatics and they will bring more people on board.
Yeah, and I think that helps you refine what are the messaging points and how are you messaging about your business. It's not like the days where you had to run expensive advertising campaigns. You've got social platforms that allow you to do those things cheaply, but through your feedback from your customers or your potential customers, you can refine your messaging. What's your value proposition? How do you succinctly communicate that? And, tracking those things and being aggressive and dedicated to staying in front of those people. I had some folks that told me it's just a matter of sometimes it's meet with 4 people each week, but meet with 4 people you don't know each week.
Yeah. So if you guys think about like know your market and your customer, and you just think about like maybe local businesses or even maybe larger businesses, like who do you see that does a really good job of this right now in the market? Like if you had to point at a North Star, who do you guys think does a good job of this?
I think a good example that just comes to mind, or a couple, You look at the Savannah Bananas and what they're doing. They came to town this past weekend, sold out. Ticket prices were through the roof, but they just understood their customer. They realized that people are coming to these baseball games and they're bored with all of these things. So they dove into the customer experience and changed everything about the game to make it more entertaining for their customer base. And now they're rapidly expanding. You know, the Savannah Bananas proper are only in Major League Baseball stadiums now. They don't even travel to the secondary market. They're expanding the league. That's a great example. I think Airbnb is another one. If you look at how they dove into the customer experience and started small and understanding everything about the idea that they had and the product they would provide, it was all about the customer experience and what their preferences were.
The little bit I've been able to get to know and work with Attract advisors. They're an accounting firm here in town. They understand that accounting perhaps isn't the favorite thing for entrepreneurs to do. So whether it's simple tax planning all the way up to paying your bills every month for you, being a fractional CFO, they can serve the needs of those small businesses out there. Super impressive group to work with, and they're always looking for ways to be better.
Yeah.
And if anybody has small kids, I'm sure you've experienced Bluey a time or two. And actually, I got my master's in creative writing, and I got to take a couple of different courses in kind of screenwriting for kids almost. And a lot of it was based around Bluey and how Bluey hits their market and knows their market is not just kids. My kids love the games that Bluey plays. And you can play them with, there's not like a Bluey balloon that you can hit the balloon up with. So they're not selling you this balloon, but what they're selling is kind of the parents. Each episode, there is a little bit in there for the parents. And so they are kind of put up there along with, kind of the rest of the ones that you've probably heard of, Dora the Explorer and all these other ones, as far as knowing their market perfectly, as far as knowing exactly who they're selling to at all times. It's the kids for sure first, but also the parents are also included in kind of everything. And so I think it touches to the Savannah Bananas. We've seen the Savannah Bananas in different leagues like with the XFL, but they weren't targeted towards children. They were targeted totally towards adults because they thought this is what people want, is something fun and different than the NFL. But what they didn't do is what the Savannah Bananas did, which is this is totally family friendly. This is totally for everyone in your family. Bring everyone. That's what everybody's doing.
Yeah, so I love it. So I think kind of the theme that's coming from here is like listen to the voice of the customer, right? Like really get to know them, dig in deep with them, not be afraid to iterate based off of what that product market fit is. So I want to open it up real quick because Andrew's going to come up and tell us a little bit more about some of the resources that live in the library that are available to each of us. But I'm just curious, are there any questions that you guys have that you want to ask this panel while we're up here? We can take one or two.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the numbers. I mean, you got to have the numbers. And I think where a lot of business owners go wrong is not using that as their foundation, because really once you have mastered what does it take to start my business and run, you've written your business plan. And the mystique of, oh my God, it's so hard. You got to live by the numbers and know what does it take to be able to make it tick every day, every week, and every month. And I think people don't know those. They don't try to know those very intimately, because if not, you'll lose.
And that's a great segue to our next panel. But yes, sir.
I think if you're trying to build a service market like that locally, there's no better way than just doing hit the pavement. I mean, go in and say, can I clean your office? Here's my card. I'm a professional person. Can I clean your office for you? Do it for free once. Get feedback. See what works. If you feel like the imagery is holding you back, take pictures while you're there, whatever. And ask that person to go review you. Say, would you mind giving us a review on Google? That's all I ask. I'll clean you for free, but can you give me a review? Do that a few times. You will feel so confident going into anybody's office after that. So I'm just a big fan of just get out there and ask people and provide the service and get feedback from it and keep building on that.
It's going to take a pound in the pavement, maybe a little bit of luck mixed in. Get your first couple of clients, right? Make them raving fans, and then leverage that.
So we've talked about knowing your market and understanding your customer, and the library has lots of resources that can help you do that. These are subscriptions that the library pays for, and they're available to you for free with just the library card. But the important thing to note is that librarians, data is very much our wheelhouse. So we can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. If you meet with a librarian, make an appointment, you just tell us what you need and we can pull that data for you, no problem. So here's an example of one of the resources that we have. So Statista, it's one of the world's leading statistics resources. So it has industry reports, it has market outlooks. So it kind of tells you where your industry might be going in the next few years. It's got everything from TikTok branding, music in the US, to apple consumption. So if you're starting an orchard, you want to see those apple consumptions going up. And these reports, they look really good. They've got lots of infographics, so you can download images, charts, put them into a pitch deck, put them into a presentation. So that's really helpful. Another resource that's in your packets but not on here is Data Axle, which is kind of a business directory. So you can use that, or we can do it for you, to look at your competitors, look at the market, people in the same industry. It's got all kinds of information on your competitors, so you can take a look. It also has heat maps. So if you're looking to choose your location for your business, you can see where there might be gaps in East Baton Rouge or wherever you're locating. And there's also an historic address search. So if you are starting a restaurant and you look up an address in there and you see there's been 4 restaurants there in the last 10 years, then, maybe that's not the spot you want to put a restaurant.
Some of our crowd are brand new startups. Some of our crowd are existing businesses. So when we talk about why is it so important for them to know their numbers? Like if they're just really good at what they do, aren't they going to be okay? Why is that so important? Who wants to jump in first?
I guess I'll start. As Stuart mentioned, it's just awesome to be on this panel. I mean, I've looked at V. Graham, Vanessa's firm, for a long time, and modeling our firm. We're about 3.5 years old. And what I've learned is we work with startups and aspiring business owners and folks who are developing. You have to understand the difference between a variable cost and a fixed cost. So if we take the gumbo example, right, the more gumbo you sell, the higher food cost you're going to have, the higher labor you're going to have. And so understanding that if you sell $100 worth of gumbo and your gross margin, which is your revenue minus your labor minus your supplies, is 20%, you're going to have about $20 off of every $100 of gumbo that you sell, and that's going to cover your overhead. So business owners need to know how to speak in the language of margin and know the difference between your variable costs and your fixed costs. And if you don't know, ask ChatGPT or ask any of the pros up here, because the first thing a banker is going to want to know when you go to get a loan is what are your numbers? What are your margins? What's your overhead costs? And if you don't know that off the bat, you lose instant credibility.
Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Jenna.
I was just going to say, on top of knowing your margin, I see companies of all sizes not really understanding what their overhead, so their fixed cost. So on top of understanding the direct cost of making that gumbo, how much of a salary do you require? What insurance do you require for your business? Are you paying rent? All of those costs are fixed overhead costs that aren't going to go away even if you don't sell the gumbo. So just really understanding that's going to drive what you need to charge to your customers in order to be a successful business. So,
All right, so let's talk about this. So we're talking today about business plans. So I'm just kind of curious, does, raise of hands, who here feels like they have like a really solid business plan when it comes to the financial side of things? Like you're really comfortable with it. You're ready to walk in front of Lane Dodd and his bank to have that conversation. This is my experience with most small businesses. In fact, I had coffee with a client last week who has a really, really good business. And I said, hey, how's your business plan right now? And he was non-existent, right? So there are a lot of people out there kind of flying without this. So let's talk a little bit about like, how important is it for you guys to see somebody show up with you and have some stuff on paper? What does that do for you guys? Like, y'all are advisors. You can really help people. How valuable is it to have that on paper for them? Talk a little bit about that. Go ahead, CJ.
So using another analogy, if you want to be in the pottery business, you got to show up with clay. I can help you mold that clay, give you ideas for that clay, but you got to have the clay. And backing up what they said in the last panel, you got to know your audience. You got to know your market. And you can't build numbers if you don't understand what that market is looking for. So again, Toby mentioned it, be excellent. Your numbers should reflect excellence. If you cannot deliver excellence through those numbers, you're always going to be challenged with raising capital. So I've got a unique background, and I help businesses work on the capital side. So if you want to be excellent, understand your market. Roland, a great example, giving it away for free a couple of times. The first one's free. Do that a couple of times. You will gather unbelievable insight, and then you can build better numbers and come to a Vanessa, come to a John and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. They can really then translate what you're trying to accomplish into the numbers that's going to help you with a Lane Dodd when you go sit down to get that loan to grow that business.
I'll add that you need to know your numbers. You need to have them well presented, and it makes sense. But you need to be able to back it up also. Okay, you need to be able to explain. For example, if you got a budget and a construction cost of $100,000, where'd you come up with that figure? Well, I just talked to some people. No, you need to be able to back it up better than that. You need to have some third party backing up of your numbers would help.
Yeah. And so I think one of the other things that I hear from business owners is really like trying to figure out their pricing, right? So a lot of times you'll hear someone goes, well, their price is $10, so I'm going to charge $9. So let's talk a little bit about if we're saying it's really important for people to have a business plan, we're really important to know variable and fixed costs. How do you guys help your clients think through like pricing models? How just share some insight to that, John.
Yeah, so for us, again, we're a relatively new firm. What I did was I looked at what the competitors were charging. As Adrian mentioned earlier, I would basically ask anybody who would go to a meeting with me what their experience was like, whether they even had this service or not, what would they be willing to pay. A lot of what we do, and I think V. Graham and CJ even, is almost replace a full-time head. So if it costs $75,000 to hire a senior accountant and we give a proposal that we can handle it for $4,000 a month, well, that's $48K compared to $75K. So figuring out how to deliver that value, for us, you have to be tech forward, right? And so I look at competitors, and then you know what else I did? I spent almost $100K on coaching. Like since 2022, pretty much everything that I've done, the first thing I did was hire a $5,000 bookkeeping coach. And then I joined this mastermind that cost me $10,000 to be in it in a year. And then we hired an EOS implementer. And then now I'm in this mastermind with about 40 CPAs in the entire nation who are just like me, I'd say 40 and under, who are tech forward, who are challenging the status quo of CPAs. And so for a business owner to start, so much of what we're saying is like, well, you got to know this and you got to know that. Well, it's not so much what you need to know, it's who you need to ask. And who are you willing to pay to give you that information? Because For me, I've had people come up to me and say, John, will you be my mentor? Will you teach me to do this or that? And I say, okay, read this book first and then come up. And if you read the book and you show me that you're willing to put in the work, then I'll pour into you. And that's just kind of what my mentors did for me. So basically, the key is, back to pricing, is ask, find a coach. And there's enough work out there for all of us to be successful. If you have that abundant mindset, that's all that you'll need to be successful.
Yeah, and so thank you for sharing that. That's great. So I want to think about if the gumbo person showed up to your office, Vanessa, and said, hey, I'm pretty sure I know my variable costs. I'm pretty sure I know my fixed costs, but I'm really struggling with like pricing. Is that something that through a solid business plan we could think about where margins need to be in pricing, and how do we think about that, or how do you guide there?
So if we go back to the idea of a business plan, and even if you're just communicating this verbally, I would focus on the life cycle of your customer. So I'm sure, I think what you were saying, it's heavy on the front end to invest in anything. And life cycle of Hannah Teague's had, client base that's been with them for eons. And I'm sure, or you can see the life cycle of clients when they're starting new ventures, they require heavy hand holding. When you're starting new ventures with your customers, you're going to put in extra cost towards them. However, as you get better at serving them, you gain a greater margin. So looking at the life cycle of how you serve a client or customer, if you're building something, whatever it is, you're going to gain more efficiencies in that. So when you select pricing, look at the life cycle of who you're serving, and price it to the whole picture, not to just today's look, would be my.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like one thing that we're doing as a firm right now is investing in ClickFunnels. So understanding how, like, the idea of a ClickFunnel is you give some lower value piece away for free and you prove yourself. And then you sell them what's called an unboxing funnel, which is like, maybe for us, it might be a course, or for a commercial cleaning company, it might be a full cleaning. And then, the next funnel up is you get them on a monthly contract. So figuring out, especially as a new business, how can you start at that ground level of giving away some value for free, but it also not bankrupting you as a business owner. And I think that building on your deliverables, to Vanessa's point, when you get them to a monthly deal, that's so sticky. Like, that is why private equity firms and firms like me, who might be in acquisition mode, like, we want that monthly recurring revenue. So a lot of things too, from learning the life cycle of the customer, is trying to figure out, how do you make them sticky?
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's one of the things that, I think going back to a business plan, I think one of the things that we're always looking at is, where's the predictable recurring revenue? What's the revenue you can most count on? So let's maybe hear from some others. Why is that, in your experience, why is that so important right now? Why is it that you're trying to help your clients also think about sustainability?
So I love what Vanessa said about, the service, right? Focusing on serving, you're solving a problem, right? And ultimately the goal is to solve a problem and get paid for solving that problem. So serving, and what John said, investing not only in yourself, but investing in your clients and your customers. If you just did those two things, you didn't hear anything else about, and what Toby said about being excellent. If you focus on serving and investing, not only in yourself, but in your clients, that really should inform your pricing model. It really should, make you look at your numbers. And I wanted to make one more comment. Heidi mentioned the very beginning about the research and having primary and secondary research. But she also said, it should be based on an experience, not just a passion, right? Just because I make gumbo doesn't mean I should be selling gumbo. But if I've got 15 years experience in the construction industry, which I'm using myself, I help 3 businesses scale and sell to private equity. They're all looking for that recurring revenue. So taking Stephen Covey, think with the end in mind. Where do you want to be 5, 10, 15 years from now? And that should be the plan, not just opening a new business, not just, so really think about how am I going to serve and how am I going to use that service to continually invest not only in myself but in my clients. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious too, like one of the other things that's just kind of bubbling up for me is like when your clients have really solid numbers and it's very predictable and you understand, and I can look at Vanessa because Vanessa used to be my fractional CFO at Skyhawk and she used to just like try to slap me around because I was the one who was not worried about the numbers. But let's talk about the confidence that the small business owner has to maybe give some things away for free, for maybe to be able to like think more about client experience and be able to like really lean into value. Like talk about where you guys have seen those who have those really clean, tight numbers. How much more confidence and freer are they to be able to go out and figure out the market needs? Talk a little bit about that. And Vanessa, you don't have to talk about me specifically. Thank God for Vanessa. Vanessa made it all happen for us. So thank you, Vanessa.
Stuart was a great student of the numbers. It's very few and far between that have a good, tight handle on the numbers. From the largest of organizations to the smallest, everybody needs help with that. Nobody is.
But once they get there, like let's say somebody's been there with you guys and you feel like you're confident, they're confident. What changes for them in being able to be experimental, R&D, focus on a client? Let's talk about that.
The most successful businesses are those that plan out what their optimal model is, meaning what their market is they serve, what it takes to serve it, what revenue stream they can achieve with that little base, okay? Like we all have plans to be huge, but think practically, what am I going to be a year from now? Who am I going to serve? How big is that audience? What does it take to provide service to them? And how much revenue will I get from that? And just center on that. Be good at that for a while. The best business owners are those that like close that loop on that first milestone, because it becomes repeatable, right? If I can be good at this level, then I can be good at this level. I can grow it 3 times as much. So take your financial plan in little increments, little milestones, basically. Think of it as pools of customers. This pool of customers today, what can I make on this pool? Then if I'm 2 times, what can I make at that? 4 times, what can I make at that? It will become repeatable if you're very good and close out the loop on one set of customers, and you learn from that. You learn what it costs to deliver. You learn mistakes you make that are expensive. You see through what the investment took and what the outcome was, and then you can adjust that for the next group of customers that you serve, doing the same thing again. You just do it faster, better, cheaper, right? I had a mentor early in my life, and that was his motto: faster, better, cheaper. Everything you do, faster, better, cheaper. But always be customer focused. Everything you did was be customer focused in everything you did. But customer wants you to be faster, better, cheaper. So you center yourself, I guess is my point, long-winded answer to your question, and just close the loop. Those are the best business owners, the most successful ones, the ones that can count out that they can say all the metrics for the pool of customers that they served over a span of time.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
And I'll add to that when you have those numbers as tight as they can be, and you come to the bank and want to go over it, it gives you the flexibility to try to expand and ask for capital, and gives you the ability to step up to the next level.
And just, I read this last night, so it was top of mind. The best teachers speak in parables, right? And so here's a parable. Stuart and I are starting a weight loss challenge, and in 30
Gonna win.
and in 30 days, we decide, we're going to meet up and we're going to step on the scale and we're going to see how we did. Well, Stuart has a scale and he checks his weight, every 3 days. He's working out, he's eating right, and I don't have a scale, and I'm just going to show up and wing it. Who's going to be more confident walking up? It's going to be Stuart, because he stepped on the scale. He knew his numbers going in. I'm going to be so scared. I don't know what it's going to look like. And so knowing your numbers is stepping on the scale. Like we say when we try to help our clients understand a budget. So it's not only a budget for your expenses, like a personal budget, but also a budget for your revenue. If I sell how many widgets, how much revenue will I earn? Banks love that, by the way. Forecasting, future looking. And what we like to say is operating a business without a budget is like entering into a weight loss challenge and never stepping on the scale. So knowing what your audience, the bankers, the investors, your customers are going to expect out of you by attending things like this, investing in the resources from the library, just getting information and coaching and the right people around you, and then having the grit to take massive action, you can't lose.
Okay, so somebody in the crowd right now, let's say it's Stuart Gilly in the crowd, says, yeah, but I look at my P&L every month. Is that not good enough? Do I really need to have a forecasted budget? Do I really need to have a business plan here? Do I really need to have these numbers looking forward? What do you guys say to them? Go ahead, CJ.
Your P&L is historical in nature. So those numbers are done. I mean, obviously you can hopefully make some adjustments. And I really want to take this opportunity. Measure What Matters is a great book, because that will ultimately help you understand what your numbers are telling you. Because if you're not measuring the right numbers, right, I would ask, I'm going to kick it to Jenna, because that's what most CPA firms and hopefully John and Vanessa would agree is your chart of accounts is part of the tool that you need to be using to better understand what those numbers mean. So the P&L is great, but that's historical. You're driving with the rearview mirror, right? Navigating that way. So talk about the importance of measuring what matters.
Yeah, so I would say, you want to make sure that P&L you're looking at is, the accurate numbers. That's where we all come in to help you with that. But I would say that most business owners, they have the creative ideas, but the numbers are what really intimidates them. So when you're building that foundation, building relationships with customers, you also want to build a relationship with a financial advisor, some person that can help you from the very beginning to make sure that the numbers are real and are accurate. Because if you wait until you've grown and you're a couple years in, it's just going to take a lot more time and a lot more money to, get the numbers to be accurate. So once you have the accurate numbers, then that's when the forecast can be more accurate and help you grow your business. So I would definitely say on the front end, you want to build that relationship with a financial advisor. So
Jenna's team and my team have done together our fair share of cleanup. That is very common. People get going. And
Are you talking about me again? I'm kidding. It was a hot mess when Vanessa showed up. She's like, y'all been having fun here. Like, yeah.
But anyway, to your point, like you're gonna get your goals faster if you start with some practice of financial measurement early on. Otherwise, you can be deep in, which is very common, to be deep in your business and have to clean it up. I mean, get the numbers straight to where they read right.
Then also I would say, we love the numbers. We love helping and assisting clients getting those numbers right. That's our passion. That's why we do this. We want to help you. So even though it's not your comfort zone, come to one of us and we'll help you get there. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to help you meet your goals. So even though that's something that might be intimidating, don't let it be. Let us help you tell your story and build your business.
And keeping the metaphor scene, if you think about a journey and a destination, like your P&L is the journey, your income statement, your profit and loss statement is the journey. The balance sheet is the destination, because the P&L builds our assets, right? And it builds our equity, which is our assets minus our liabilities. So you cannot just understand the P&L. You have to know what your balance sheet means. You have to know what's an asset to you and what are your liabilities. Because at the end of the day, if all goes right, your net income will eventually turn into cash. But if it doesn't, you need to know why. You can't just say, oh, I did, $1 million last year of net income, but Exxon owes me $600K and I have to pay all my subcontractors and I have no money, so I'm about to go bankrupt. So you have to understand how your P&L works with your balance sheet, or find somebody, just like the pros up here said, who can help you understand it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. I want to kick it to the audience real quick before we invite Andrew up. Any questions that anybody has? Yes, ma'am.
I would say you do not have to go by the typical financial format. When we talk about making a forecast, we're talking about building out the model. So what does it take? What is your business? Or security. Okay. So you need to do that in volume, right? It's not like one customer costs X. I mean, it does, right? But to make money, you really need a volume of customers, because you need to fill the capacity of a team of people that provide that service, right? So what is the capacity of the team? And then how much revenue there's a max that team can serve. I would say to understand that, because you got to keep the capacity of the team, right? It's physical people providing security, or is it electronic? So both. Okay. So there's a capacity in how much you can do across the team. To understand that is critical, and that we can help put together financials, and match that model to that outcome on that financial. And the more you get to know, okay, if I do this with these resources over and over, it produces this financial statement, then you will begin to learn that financial statement and understand it. It will speak to you, but that statement has to tell your story, and it can be changed by all of us in any way. There's no set way that those financials have to be presented. So, but to know what's possible in your world is important. And I would start there, because that's what's efficient. That's what's profitable. That's all those numbers come from your personal model and your setup. Does that make sense?
I'll add a couple of thoughts. One, and I agree with CJ, you need to be as comfortable with your financial reports as the bank. And that's not the message you want to send the bank, by the way, when you start to sit down with them. That, I don't know the financials. But there are certain efficiency numbers across all, restaurants, for example. It's a 30% cost of sales, 30% labor. Find out what the security efficiency is on labor, and then it's just it's something you can calculate on your own. It's labor divided by sales, and work towards that.
Yeah, I can resonate with the question, because it's actually the reason why we started Attract, was because my dad owned a millwork distribution company and never understood his numbers, and he didn't have somebody who could digest it for him like a lot of these pros up here can. But I actually think that as a business owner, to CJ's point, knowing your revenue, gross margin, net margin is important. But Stuart mentioned something about KPIs, key performance indicators. Like, what are the 3 or 4 main metrics that I can look at every single week to know how I'm doing? So on the way over here, I was on the phone with a roofer, and he needs to understand, what is his labor cost per square? A square is a 10 by 10 piece of a roof. Most of our houses probably have 40, 50, 60 squares, whatever. Understanding your labor cost per square, your revenue cost per square, and then what are you selling it for? If you have an accountant who's keeping up with everything else, that's really all you need to know. And you understand how much your overhead cost is, to the point of earlier. For security, a lot of times you mix in man hours or labor hours with your cost and with your revenue. So understanding that, hey, if my team worked 100 hours today between, a bunch of different people, and I sold 10K worth of security systems, well then, you understand what your metrics are at that point, as opposed to next week, if you only sell 8,000, then your KPI basically contracted and you weren't as efficient.
Quickly, I'll tell you about Gale Business Entrepreneurship. So this is an informational resource. So when you have questions about things like what does this financial term mean on a statement, then this is kind of the A to Z place where you can look it up and get a kind of deeper understanding of what the phrase means. So it's got things like ebooks in there, articles, videos. Let me pull up here. And it also has, well, the strongest part of it is the sample business plans that you can find in there. So pretty much whatever your industry is, you'll be able to find successful business plans that somebody else has already done. So you can kind of see how they laid things out. You can download them, copy them, well, change the numbers, make it yours, but gives you a really good idea of what a successful business plan can look in a particular industry. And so that information, aside from the business plans, is arranged into these 4 sections: plan, fund. So there's a whole section on funding related topics, start and manage.
Somebody walks into you guys as an advisor or a teacher, so to speak, and says, okay, I've got this amazing business plan. I worked with the library. I leverage every bit of access and tools, Data Axle, Statista, Gale. I feel really good about it. What's the first step to me successfully putting this into action? What do you say? What say you? I like the teacher always goes first. Let's go, Heidi.
I'm going to go to the market segment, because that's a really important part of your business plan. And you've got that persona, who your customer is.
Right.
You've done your research, so you should know what avenues to use your marketing dollars. You've done your financial. You should have had something in your startup for some type of marketing and something monthly. So I would implement that right away. That is one thing where people will call back and say, I don't, what do I do? I'm like, well, it's showtime. So
That's
you've
it.
done the dress rehearsal. And if you've done it correctly and you have methodically worked on the numbers and you've done that market research, you should be ready to go at that point. And just at that's where the experience, I think CJ said it earlier too. If you have the experience, it won't be second nature and you'll be able to implement.
Right.
I would say sell. And selling is oversimplifying. There are books out there, Fanatical Prospecting is one. There are books that teach you how to sell. You need to leverage your current network, post on Facebook about what you're doing, post on your Instagram, tell everybody you know, look, I have 5,000 contacts in my phone. And when I started my company, I went through every single contact and just copied and pasted a text message. And I didn't do it with my thumbs because my thumbs got tired. So I got this Bluetooth keyboard that I learned that this guy named Tim Ferriss, who's like an entrepreneur coach and he wrote all these amazing books, told me to use it. So I just started copy and pasting. Hey, I'm starting an accounting firm. If you know anybody who needs X or Y, you have to be able to put yourself out there because they're not going to come to you. You just have to knock on the doors and send the messages and tell everybody what you're doing and don't be scared. Because the thing about it is, I used to worry about people like they think that I was arrogant or they think that I, was out kicking my coverage. Like I wasn't worthy of telling people about what I was doing. I was worried about the people who I would detract. And this is kind of a pun, but worry about the people who you're going to attract in your world.
Great pun.
Because everybody in this room is here because they want to get better. So I'd start by this room. Let everybody in this room know what it is that you do when you're networking, because there's a certain type of person that everybody in this room wants to sell to, And they all just happen to be sitting in this room because it's somebody who wants to grow their business or better themselves or make a better world for their family. And you just have to seek that person out and put yourself out there.
Love it.
Yeah, to add to that, I ascribe to the 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. So doing the thing and constantly improving on how you're doing it. I mean, understanding that when you move from the planning phase to the implementation phase, there's going to be some awkwardness. There are going to be some mistakes made. Don't be so hard on yourself that you're not willing to know that that's coming, be humble enough to accept it, and make it better the next day.
Yeah. Go ahead, CJ.
I would the first question I'm going to ask is who's on your team? Because your entrepreneur, John mentioned it, Vanessa mentioned it. We've all talked about, Toby, who is pouring into you, and conversely, who are you pouring into? Because it's all about stewardship, right? Passing the torch to the next generation. But that's my first question is this plan is great. Who are you going to call crying at 11:30 at night because you didn't make your numbers in month 3? Who's on your team? Because that team is what's going to see you through. The plan is important, right? A good plan executed violently today is better than a perfect plan next week. Pat said that back to Mike Tyson. So that's my first question is who have you surrounded yourself with to make yourself better?
Yeah, and I love how you guys answered it because that's the spirit of a startup answer, right? And if we stay in that vein, I would say this: if you're here today and you're one of the brand new startup companies and you went and put all this business plan together, and I appreciate what everybody said, go out and do it. Just know this: you have already set yourself apart. If you have put together a business plan, if you've leveraged all the resources of the library, if you by some chance were able to connect with one of the people in this room or up here and get a little bit of sage wisdom, I'm telling you, you are a 3%er.
And most
know
people will
that and be
they discount
confident
it
with
too.
that.
And they discount doing a plan. I've heard it many times like, oh, you don't need to do a business plan or what have you. Well, you wouldn't go grocery shopping without a list, right? Or do some type of research, right? You'll be aimless, and that's what happens when you don't have a plan or people think it's not worth doing. You're very aimless in the market. So if you can't write it, articulate what you sell, you can't sell it. If you cannot articulate it, write it down, or what have you. How are you going to convince somebody else to buy from you?
That's right. All right. So now I want to flip it because we have our other half of the room. They're like, no, I'm an existing business owner, but maybe I don't have all of the plan that I need, or maybe I've never really stopped and gone backward, 2 steps backwards to take 1 step forward. So let's talk a little bit about it. So it's a 3-year-old business. It's, doing $500,000 a year. They maybe have operated without a plan, a financial strategy here, but they've gone now and done it. What do you recommend that they do next? Is that any different wisdom? Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
I'd like to take this opportunity. So Ms. Monica, in the last session, this goes directly to that. So the question really was, how do I take the numbers that I know intimately, which Monica knows her numbers intimately, and how do I communicate those in a way that my employees understand what we're trying to accomplish? And so that if I am restating it properly now, that is where the rubber meets the road is your numbers, your plan, what you're trying to accomplish. You're 3 years in and you know that, hey, February, we're not going to make our numbers, guys. What do you tell them? Not just saying, hey, you need to do something differently, but what specific actions can they take based on what the numbers are telling you? I don't know if I'm answering your question specifically, but that's the biggest challenge I find working with clients is okay, I know my numbers. How do I affect them in a way that I want to get down the road further? And so that, to answer your question and to bring it back, your numbers, how do I get my employees to understand what we're trying to accomplish based on those numbers?
And I think that ties into this idea of a scorecard. I think everybody in the organization should have a number, and the numbers should be activity based. And you can start with your P&L and just back into what does it take to make this number come true? What are the activities that my folks do every day in order to make that number a reality, right? And share those numbers on a weekly basis so you can catch it before it gets to the end of the month and you're looking in the rearview mirror that you didn't get there.
Yeah, I do love what both of you are saying, and I think it's really important. It's around alignment, right? If you are a 3-year-old business and you have 10 employees and you go and do this work and you don't get your team to buy in on it, why'd you do the work?
Yeah, I think it's super important to understand that if you have a business that's growing, it's not enough to be excellent at the thing that you sell. You have to be a really great organization builder, and the sooner you understand that, the better off you'll be, because it's not going away. It's critical to growth.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Sean, Heidi?
Yeah, what I'll add to that, I actually thought about this maybe yesterday, and I don't know if this idea is already taken, but I thought one day I'll write a book, and the book is going to be called like What I Learned from Winners. And what I've learned from winners is really you got to look at yourself in the mirror and be completely honest with yourself and say, if I'm 3 years into my business and I'm doing $500,000 a year, am I willing to do what it takes to scale or to get bigger or to get better? And what that really means is almost like denying yourself. Like what got you to 500K is not going to get you to 10 million. And you know how I know? Because that was me, right? Like we've had, and again, I'm not being arrogant, but I'm just saying we've grown 60% every year, and I've 3x'd in 5 years. And what it took was similar to what CJ and Toby said, like having a coach in the room who's going to hold me accountable, and knowing that what got me here is not going to take me to where I want to go. If you can look in the mirror and you can say, I'm happy with my income and I'm happy with my time, like our two most valuable assets, time and money. If we're comfortable with that, then there's no need to grow. But if you're uncomfortable with that, then there's some tweaks that need to be made. And it starts with an operating system like EOS. There are other operating systems out there, but there's going to come a time when you have to have buy-in from your team. And if your team's not buying into your vision, then you need to find a new team. You need to be able to make those hard decisions as you continue to scale and evaluate the people you have around you. Again, just because they got you to 500K in revenue doesn't mean they're going to get you to 3 million in revenue. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, Heidi, any?
No, I would say like the number side, but then like you said, the people side. And I'm with him. The vision that may have gotten him at 500,000, that person can't dream further. And so if that you don't have growth oriented people, then they have to go. And everyone struggles with that. It's not something that's specific to one type of business. It's, hey, does that person want to take it to that next level and learn the numbers that are going to make the difference? Because you can't watch everybody every day. So having that mindset that, hey, growth is what we want. These are the numbers, because I'm going to go back to the numbers. If I just want to grow 10%, well, what do I need to do daily, weekly, and monthly and get there?
I do want to open this up real quick to the crowd. If anybody has a question about execution, like, okay, you have a business plan. Now what do you go do? I'm a huge fan of what you said, because the reality is, guys, sometimes friends and family are more worried about being your friends and family post the conversation. What do you guys think about like outside counsel? John, tell me a little bit about that.
All right.
Because you look fired up to answer
fires
this.
me up because when I was in college, I wanted to be an attorney. And going into my second to last year, I switched to accounting because I knew that I needed a backup plan if law school didn't work out for me. And you know what my dad told me? He said, I cannot believe you're going to choose accounting. Accountants are a dime a dozen. And my dad is my mentor. He's my best friend. I got chills just thinking about it because I knew from that point on that I was going to prove him wrong. And what I'm saying here is careful who you listen to. Like my dad doesn't know anything about business. I'm helping him with his business now. And so who do I listen to? Who's my circle of influence? This guy right here. He's not only a coach, he scaled and sold a business. Like when you pick a coach, find someone who's done it. I would rather you go to somebody who says, look, I'm not a coach. I just know how to run a good business. That's who you need to that's who you need to learn from. Don't learn from these gurus who sell these online courses who have never done it. They're called shovel sellers. Like when the gold rush hit in California, the people who made the most money were the shovel sellers, right? They weren't the people who were mining the gold. So be so careful about who you take your advice from. I take advice from Toby. I take advice from Stuart. I take advice from this guy named Dominic Luke, who's a former pararescue man, who's teaching me mindset and things of that nature. I take advice from like people who are older than me, who have been successful in business. Again, I just come with a posture of humility, and I ask them, like, hey, like this always happens to me. Hey, can we go to lunch soon? And they say, oh man, I'm tired up, but let's look at some dates, which means like, I'm okay, but not right now. So then follow them up. Hey, I know I just reached out back in July. I realized, school's back in. Do you have time to meet up? It's just all about taking action.
Green feet.
That was like a master course in 3 minutes.
All I would add is you said the magic word, your peer group, right? Go to people. Jay Dixon is in the crowd, and he's a successful entrepreneur who, if you get a moment, ask, relatively, it was a black tie event, Jay, but, True Peer is the name of an organization for MSPs. So that is the gold standard for that industry. Find the gold standard, Miss Monica, the gold standard in your industry. I'm sure you are part of an association or some group that is a group of your peers where you can get the information you need, to Toby's point, to be excellent. Because you're not in this to be mediocre, right? You don't want to be a dime a dozen, and you've got to add value. It's about relationships, not about transactions. You got to be excellent, so find a peer group that's going to drive that excellence. And EOS, by the way, there is no other system from my perspective. I've been in the business for a long time, and I'm not selling Toby specifically, but it is the gold standard for running your business. That's it. And entrepreneurial operating system. I'll do it for you, Toby.
We're going to talk a little bit about that. And there's actually in your resources, you'll see that the library here has a book called Traction. And it's in paper. It's also Audible ebook. And so that's one of the books that, most small business owners find really helpful when they think about operations and really kind of like moving their business from a plan and how does that work. Toby is an EOS implementer up here, so I'm sure he'd be more than happy to tell anybody about why he believes in it. But that's a good resource in the library. It's it's at your fingertips. I've read the book 6 times. It's called Traction. It's by Gino Wickman. Again, it's in your packet, and you'll see that in there when we talk about the roadmap. All right, we're gonna kick it to Andrew before he kicks us off stage. Hey guys, round of applause for this panel. Great job, guys.
So the library has subscriptions to Gale Presents Udemy and to LinkedIn Learning, and there are thousands and thousands of courses available in these platforms. They're not shovel salesmen, they're all experts. So again, a subscription for yourself would probably cost you hundreds a year, but you can get these with just your library card. And here are some example courses that just cover kind of business plan beginnings.
What I want to do is I want everybody to answer this as honest as you can. So we're on scale 1 to 4 on each of these questions. So the first one is, I understand my ideal client or ideal customer, and their problem. So if you think about the first session, we unpacked this a little bit. How clear are you on that? 1 through 4. And if you do 4, that means like you're really buttoned up on this. You are absolutely sure on that, right? And so just go through each of these, but we'll take just like 4 or 5 minutes to do that. And then what we're going to do is when you get to the end of it, you'll flip it over and you'll just add up your numbers and calculate your score to 40.
So we're going to give you a bit of a live look into Gale Business Plan Builder while you do that. So on Thursday from 4 to 8, it's in your packets, but we'll be having a drop-in workshop on this product. So you'll be able to see in a lot more depth and play with it, ask questions, that kind of thing. Okay, so here we are. This is what it looks like when you log in. I do have a sample practice company that I've created. But you'll see there is a section for profit and for non-profit. So it has two basic structures. So of course, if you have a non-profit, it works with like your organization and stuff like that. So it's broken down into these sections on the left-hand side. So, and the first one is the entrepreneur profile. This is what it looks like. So you kind of work through, the entire platform follows the same process. So you're working through editing each different section. So the first one, the entrepreneur profile, is trying to help you understand, are you ready to be an entrepreneur? Do you have kind of what it takes to do it? Are you ready for this? And throughout, it'll give you questions and answers, prompts to kind of help you write this out, how to flesh it out.
So it's really comprehensive, Andrew, right? I mean, if you're looking to come meet with someone like Toby or Vanessa or, Hannes T. Bourgeois, going through this process is going to make you a better consumer. It's going to make you a better client to these folks. And quite frankly, it's going to make you a better entrepreneur, because if you think through all these things, and I think Stuart mentioned this earlier, you got to be honest with yourself, right? You've got to ask some really hard questions. But if you go through this process, you can get to 85 to 90% done, so that when you do seek out that mentor or seek to mentor someone else, you'll be much better because of how comprehensive the business planner is.
Yeah, the deliverables that come out of this, they're fantastic for, showing what you've worked on. And for each section, it links to Gale Business Entrepreneurship that I showed you a little earlier. So that will give you more in-depth information about each section to help you work through it. So the next section is the business ideation. It defaults to the lean canvas, which looks at problems, solutions, your unique value propositions, what separates you from the rest. And again, it's got these prompts here to help you fill it out and make you think about it. It also has these other options if you prefer, things like Porter's.
Can you stay there for 1 second?
Yeah.
So back to what everybody was talking about, Mr. Rowland, as you're going through this is where you're going to want to have conversations with not just friends and family, but seek out prospective clients. Ask them these questions, right? As you're going through this is going to give you that template to help you build out what your offering is, because I think it was Miss Heidi or Miss Vanessa that said it. Your offering is what's most important. At the end of the day, that is what the solution that you're providing to the market, and your market has to understand that solution. So,
yeah, and so you have this idea. This turns this idea into something more solid. And so it does have these other formats for canvases like SWOT, so strengths, weaknesses, Porter's 5 forces. So all these different options, but you don't have to complete them all. The next section is the break-even analysis. So we're getting into the financial aspects. So, and it has editable forms here where you can enter all the information that you have. And it also has this useful guide me option, because if you're like me, the financials, like cost of goods, capital, sales.
So soup to nuts, or gumbo to widgets.
And then it's the actual business plan itself is the next section. So here you can put in your mission, logo, all kinds of stuff. And so when you print out this deliverable, it's going to look nice and professional. If you're bringing it to an investor or somebody you're telling your business about, they're going to be impressed and be like, oh, this person knows what they're doing. They're prepared. And then the final section is financial projections. So, and this is really useful because a lot of people don't know what you have to think about with, what you're going to have to spend. So this kind of lays it all out there, makes you think, is this something I need to consider? Do I have an amount for it? Inventory, that kind of stuff.
Stuart is lurking, but I've got the most important thing I think is, so this looks very daunting, right? And I will say from personal experience, I've had several meetings. Jolie is one of the librarians, or, I'm not sure what the term is, but you've got Austin. Yes, sir, Mr. Rowland.
You would have to get a library card with us. Each library, each parish library probably has its own set of resources. I'm not sure if they have this or not, but so it might depend on the parish library.
But there might be some reciprocity, depending. You said nine different parishes, but this can be very daunting. I had a 1-hour meeting with Jolie, and she walked me through it along with other resources. This is just one of the resources. You guys are doing 4 to 8 on Thursday. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you want to come along to that next workshop on Thursday, we can, really get in depth with this and help you with it.
Andrew, real quick, does somebody have to be a library patron to come to the workshop from 4 to 8?
No, everybody's welcome.
That's just open to whomever.
Yeah.
Okay.